I have a confession to make. I didn't eat bread probably for the last 6 months or so, maybe a bit less. However, I know that on this channel we talked about bread for quite some time, and I felt that you deserve this update because I have been on the carnivore diet. I would say 90%. I'm 90% on the carnivore diet, and I'm not eating any carbohydrates like sugars, potatoes, or anything like that. And I haven't really felt this good for quite some time. Just under about 6-7-ish weeks, I lost about 22 pounds of weight that I, didn't even think that I would lose that much, but I did, and I feel absolutely amazing. My back feels amazing. That I thought it was just from working a lot and whatever, but it turns out maybe it was just inflammation. So yeah, it's been amazing, quite amazing. Now beyond that, I did change my sleeping habits, and I haven't really worked out more than I used to, so I know the results have to be from the diet, right? Maybe the sleeping pattern changes, but I told you about that a long time ago, that I'm kind of like part of the 5 a.m. club now, or whatever that would be, right? That I try to wake up with the sun and to get that magic hour into meditation. With that said, is it for everyone? I think probably it is, but maybe it's not. So I'm not here to convince you one way or the other, but it has truly worked wonders for me, and I think I would be holding something back from you if I didn't tell you about it. And basically that's why I wanted to talk about this a little bit. But of course, if in the comments section or on the Telegram channel or on the Buy Me a Coffee or Patreon, you have more questions about my diet or the changes that I did, lifestyle changes, then I'm more than happy to do more videos. Actually, I think it's probably would be one of the most important topics that I could share if people are interested, because I think it's been truly life-changing for me and my wife as well, who's been doing the same thing. She started exactly when I did. So yeah, I still think bread is quite important for survival. I do think that we need to know how to make the proper way bread from just stored grain, right? Because grain stores easily, and you need to be able to make sourdough bread, and you need to make good tasting bread. So I do miss the taste of it, right? However, I know it's survival food, and I think beyond that, it's spiritually survival food. It has been thought out as survival food probably by the Sumerians back in the day, and it was great because you could store grain for a long term, and when there were war times or there were other calamities or hunger back in those days, then it was the thing to eat, right? And I think Eastern Europeans have this affinity for bread because we have gone through such times that it was just became part of our culture. But I don't think it is part of our culture. It was probably pushed on to us. And I have to look up this name of this book, but it was a Transylvanian cookbook. I know it sounds scary, but it's not, believe me. It's I guess maybe if you're a vegetarian. So I guess the nobility back then in Transylvania, they had this lady who was like a special cook for them, and she wrote down like regular recipes at the time, right? And they would just like pass these recipes between the lords and between the wealthy people, and oh, let me try this wild hunt food with whatever. And I remember reading about this in high school, and my high school teacher was kind of laughing about this book, that how unhealthy these noble people back in the Middle Ages used to eating all this animal fat and animal meat, and basically eggs and animal fat and animal meat. And now we know that's not good for your heart or something like that. And I kind of like, I didn't give two anythings about that book at that time, but I remember kind of the sarcasm and whatever that was surrounding when we were taught about this book. This, for some reason, it was very famous where I grew up in Transylvania, because it originated from that, and it's one of the oldest like cookbooks that we had. And we actually had to learn about that in high school in literature class, and it was quite interesting. And now I'm thinking like maybe I should pick that book up again. Now, of course, they were hunting animals that they don't even exist now in Transylvania, but it was quite interesting, like how many courses of food they had, and it was mostly just meat. It was just pretty much meat and cooked in fat and lard and whatever. I guess what, right? No seed oils or anything like that. And I was thinking about like, okay, well, that's clearly interesting, but then you match it up with like, I wonder what the peasants ate, right? Clearly they were not on the same diet, right? And I think there's this schism between like the ultra rich back in the Middle Ages and the absolutely poor people, the people who would be working on the fields, what they ate, and multiply that by many generations. I think you have almost like two castes of people, right, where one is eating healthy and one is not. And I think it's always like the tasty peasant food always somehow bubbles up to the nobility. If you go down to Louisiana, you'll see like the most famous foods. Or I think just to give you an example, I think polenta and crawfish and whatnot, or shrimp, that used to be like, that's something like bugs. The peasants ate that, but now it's like really expensive, and you can make it in expensive ways, and you get shrimp cocktails and whatever. So it always bubbles up because somehow the poor people have more fun and they enjoy life more, as long as they're not like in the good times, right? In the good times where they're doing fairly well. So I think food and culture bubbles up to some degree, but where I want to take this is that I think, and this is my opinion, I think that somehow the carnivore diet is way more natural to man in a wealthy state, in the sense of when food and life is plentiful. So when food and life is plentiful in the good ages, or for someone who's well off, then it becomes way more, how should I put it, way more natural. Because if you take a look at, you go into a forest, right? You're back in whenever God created Adam and Eve and they were kicked out, right? Then you go out and, okay, well, what do I have to eat here? And you go into the Carpathian Mountains and there's nothing. If you think you can survive off of just mushrooms or picking berries, you're absolutely crazy. Like what are the mushrooms that or berries you're gonna pick in the winter time? So I think meat was absolutely necessary for survival and for thriving. So in that landscape, or just load up on your computer screen an image of nature, and there's nothing to eat. There's absolutely nothing to eat, unless of course a little bunny shows up, or a deer shows up, or a bird shows up, or you find an egg, or you hunt, or you trap, or you do something where you're gonna eat another, I would say an animal, right? Some type of animal protein. If not, you can get off on, you can eat some type of roots, but you're not gonna survive very long. So I think it's way more natural, and going back to that diet, and going back to more natural sleeping patterns, and going back to more natural way of work, where the work is not a 9 to 5 type of domesticated zoo type of life, where someone else sets your schedule, but you know what your job is in this world, and you know that you're trying to provide value for others, is such a big health benefit that I think it's exactly what our world needs right now. Going back to basics, providing for your fellow man, right, through your work, and eating natural, and getting that sunlight, and living in a natural way, where you don't send off your kids to school to be under neon lights for 8 hours or X hours per day, right? I think it has such benefits that I could not even begin to explain. Unless you actually started living a similar lifestyle, you won't even understand how good it can get physically and mentally for you. So that's something I wanted to talk about, because I think that has been probably the biggest change in my life recently, and I would be doing a disservice to all of you, all of my followers and people who have watched this channel, if I would not be talking a little bit about this, or maybe even more if you guys are interested. But going back to natural life, that something is in nature, instead of this, I would say, domesticated type of lifestyle where you go in to the store and pick something up that's triple packaged, shipped to you, maybe from India somewhere, packaged in Pakistan, and you think that's food and you're gonna eat that, right? So I've heard this somewhere where they say, like, oh, if it didn't exist 200 years ago, you shouldn't eat it. It's almost, and I used to agree with that. Now I think it needs to be probably 1,000 years. Maybe if it didn't exist 1,000 years ago, then you should not eat it. And because it turns out many of the even vegetables that we eat now did not used to exist 1,000 years ago, and we kind of like selectively bred vegetables and selectively bred, everything. I mean, even the animals at this point, right? There's just so different. Okay, I don't want to go on a tangent here, but do what you can if you can, and try to go back to a natural way of life, a natural way of eating, without processed food. And I think, just pray every day and meditate every day, and you will see benefits in your life that you would not believe. I guarantee that. I can guarantee that, because it has happened to me. And it has been amazing. Now, on the other hand, you guys know that I have been holding fasts, and not just food, but also news and other toxic people that I've been kind of holding back on, that I just I cleaned up my life in the sense of my inputs. I've been cleaning my inputs, whether that's I haven't had a TV in the house for maybe about 14 years now, but I used to check the news daily. Now I don't check the news at all unless somebody tells me, oh, check this out, and if the topic seems interesting, maybe I'll check it out 3 days later or something like that. So cleaning out your inputs. Of course, I gave up on alcohol about nine months ago, so that has been tremendously good. Even though I kind of like just only used to drink a couple of beers here and there, but it was messing up my prayers and the meditations early in the morning if I had a drink or a beer like late last night, right? So the night before, I should say. And I just thought, it's not worth it. I would rather stick with my habit of meditating every morning, and then I know my channels are clear. So I think that it's just my lifestyle changed in a way that it would be just like crazy not to have worked. So I think here is where your power lies, right? Because we talk about like government overreach, or losing this liberty and losing that liberty. But if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't take care of your soul and your body and your mind and spirit, then it doesn't matter if they take or don't take your liberty, because you have taken your liberty from yourself. You're taking your true purpose, the possibility of finding your true purpose in life away, because you are indulging in snacking, indulging in alcohol, indulging in other stuff that you should not be. So it's just a natural continuation that someone else continues that path and wants to take more of what you took from yourself already. So I think you gotta start with yourself, and once you have a life where you're managing your life and you're managing your inputs, then the way I think about it is that your life that is surrounding you is basically like almost like a big a slot machine, and you just pull that thing and it spins and something gets spit out, right? And it's something that was the input. So you have all these inputs and you pull that lever, and from the thought patterns and from the inputs that you had from last year, last month, last week, or even from your childhood, something gets put out for the next day. Something the matrix generates for you, right? And if it's your fears, and if it's your if it's things that you absolutely hate, then the next day you're gonna have the same thing that you had before, because it's a continuation of the pattern that you already have in your mind. And may that be something that you perceive that something is being done against you by a third party, you actually just put yourself into that situation. That's my belief. So if we constantly worry about what happens, right? We give energy for that thing to happen, because we are feeding into that reality pattern. And the way I see it is, if we constantly fear about, and I'm just going to give you an example of CBDCs being introduced. Well, that just plays into their hand exactly the way they want you to, because whether you want it or you fear it, you're on the same energy pattern. So you're just like constantly talking about it, and you're picking up on that vibration, and then just you manifest it into your life. But the way you fight that is you just say no thank you, without emotion, without fear, without loathing it, without hating it, without loving it. No, that's just crap, I don't want it, thank you, no. Just like back in the COVID days, they were at some point in some states, right, not everywhere, not in small towns, but in some bigger cities, when we traveled, and they were standing in front of the door and giving you the mask, and you just say, no, what is that? No, I'm just going. And then you now need to exert pressure, or I guess almost force, to stop me on my natural course. So now it's up to you. But if I stand there at the door and I say like, whoa, what is this? And this is like, I'm not gonna do it. And you put too much emotion in there, then that almost like validates them being there. They are validated because, they are the crazies that don't want to put the mask on, right? So you validate their existence. You validate the totalitarian government existence by you opposing it vehemently and putting exuberant amount of effort. That means that they have to exist because you want something to fight against. But if you are you don't even acknowledge their existence, because that's so stupid for you, then they lose their power. Like one of the ways how we fought communism, I would say, back in Romania, not me, I was fairly young, right? But my father and his generation was ridicule. And I think it's the most powerful tool to kill the king, right? Because we go back into archetypes a little bit. We talked about archetypes on this channel, and what the totalitarian rulers want to always hold the archetype of the king, right? The ruler. Now, the king can be good or bad, it doesn't matter, but the totalitarian people always want to hold this, even though they think they hate kings. The archetype is the king, right? And the enemy of the king is the jester, right? And the jester, because the jester makes fun out of the stupidities of the king, right? So in a way, it's a natural balance where if the king self-reflects, then if a good king self-reflects, then he can, because the jester always emulates the king in a funny way, right? If the king tries to put a different stupid rule on the people, then the jester plays the king as if he would be the king, and plays that scene out, and as the king sees himself in the jester, he can auto-correct. But if not, the king becomes the point of ridicule. So that is why we have so many Soviet-style communist jokes about things, right? And that was a way to kind of dry out the talent. It was the way to dry out the new generation from wanting to be communist, because they were always constantly ridiculed. Towards the end of communism, the communists, the totalitarians, were ridiculed by the general folk. So that meant that no young person with a high IQ, I should say, or self-esteem would want to be in their position in the future. So naturally, the new generation would take an opposing view, right? The cool view, right? The ridicule view. So that is the archetype of the sun, right? And that is what I should say most old and religious fanatics are afraid of, because it's always the Son, just like the Son of God, Jesus Christ, came to the Jews to rebel, right? The rebel. So then the sun archetype comes into play and completely destroys the old rule, right? So you just have to wait things out and ridicule, and you just have to not even acknowledge their existence. That is how you fight passively, and that is how you win, right? So I think that's enough for today, but we'll be doing more videos recently. I mean, from now on. I think there were some changes in my life recently that will give me more time to make videos. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm thinking about probably member videos or something like that, but they're gonna be along these lines that we talked about here today, because the changes are here, and they're amazing, and we have amazing things to look for. All right, talk to you next time.